All right, we're live. Welcome everyone who has joined already. Hopefully a few more people are going to be joining in the next few minutes. I just wanted to jump on today. I know that in the UK it is today a bank holiday Monday, and I wasn't planning to actually do anything today, but some stuff came out that beat absolutely everyone's expectations, and I wanted to jump onto this live as the US markets are open today, because the US, unlike the UK, is working today, and the markets are open today. Pretty much all the states, I think, are open today. And for anyone who doesn't know, for anyone who hasn't seen this news, because I am ecstatic about this. I'm going to explain exactly why I'm ecstatic about this in just a second, but we have had a big update. I'm going to just share the screen over here. Had a very, very big update over the weekend where Tesla announced their Q1 sales. They always announce their quarterly sales totals 2 days or 3 days after they happen. So here it was 2 days after, which is really, really quick and really good. This doesn't talk at all about their profitability. It doesn't talk about their margins on different cars. It doesn't talk about their factory updates. It doesn't talk about anything really. It only really talks about the numbers of cars that they sold. And this is the really exciting thing. They sold 184,800 cars in the first quarter, which is incredible. 185,000 cars. Depending on which analysts you follow, which channels you watch, the sort of like expectation really varied. Some people, once these numbers came out, were saying the expectation was more like 172, 175. That realistically, before the numbers were published, if you looked at what the predictions were, most people were probably averaging somewhere in the 162 to 168 territory. So there's a number of different reasons. They managed to sell about 180,000 cars in Q4 2020, and in Q1, typically they always sell quite a few cars less. So that's a good place to start, right? They weren't expected to get over 180 by any means, because Q1 is always a much quieter quarter. Normally, Q4 is by far the biggest one for sales. So that was that start. Second, they had a massive number of issues with chips. So they use a bunch of different chips, AMD, some other producers, and those chips have been in massive short supply. You might have watched some of my other videos where I talk about this and why I'm investing in some of those companies as well. There is an enormous global demand for semiconductors, for various different kinds of chips, and Tesla is not immune to those shortages that have been going around for about 7 months now. So those companies can't produce the stuff fast enough for the sort of global demand that is beginning to happen. It's not just cars. Cars are a tiny little thing. There's all kinds of computing, cloud data centers, processing, lots more video content. There's just a million different things going on. And the level of computing required for all those things is insane. So that was one thing. So the chip shortage. Then they had a factory fire, and they don't have any factories at the moment. They only really have 2 properly operational factories at the moment. California, Shanghai. I know they have some other centers, for example, Tilburg, and where they actually do the final assembly, but actually the manufacturing does happen in California for that. So there are quite a few interesting things there. By the way, tomorrow I'm going to be publishing 2 videos, at least 2 videos, but 2 videos that you might find really interesting. One is I'm finally going to be publishing that video that I've promised to publish for about 2 to 3 weeks now, but I haven't had the time to. Now I have had the time to actually do some of the work. I actually did it before this update happened, so I might have to adjust it slightly based on these numbers. But I have a video where I'm going to be talking about my valuation for Tesla, exactly how I arrived at it. I'm going to be showing and walking through the model. I might even share the Excel. I'm not sure, because the problem with sharing the Excel is there's a bunch of shortcuts that I have to take with doing one of these kinds of videos versus how I would maybe do the full big all singing or dancing model. And the reason is, if I go way too complex, way too big, way too sophisticated, it's one going to take me a lot of time. We're talking like many weeks worth of work to do a proper, if that was my project, if that was my actual job, exclusively doing that. But the second thing is, the moment I do that, some people will find some things that the more different complexities introduced, the more people don't like them and stuff, or they'll find like, oh, well, you did this slightly different to how I would do it, or maybe I'll even make some mistakes. So anyway, I'm gonna talk completely transparently about exactly how my valuation was arrived at. It's very different probably to some of the other stuff that you might have seen on the channels or other people talk about. But anyway, it is going to be much, much bigger than the $660 that we closed at on Friday, and I think much bigger than the price is going to be today anyway. So I'm going to be talking about that tomorrow, and also I'm going to be doing I don't do these very often because I think they're actually boring as anything. Like, I'm going to do a sort of portfolio update type video, but I'm going to actually try to introduce a bit of learning. I'm going to talk about a bunch of stuff that is really bad with my portfolio so that people can learn from my mistakes, or maybe don't do stupid things that I do, but I'm going to walk through exactly what I have have across the different investment portfolios that I have with different providers and all that stuff, and show you why and how some of them are actually like accidental. Like I have a portfolio on eToro, like over here. Let me show, like I've got a portfolio over here where I have stuff. None of it are well, like it's not very structured or very smart. I have stuff for testing. I have stuff because I did it as part of an introductory video. I have some other stuff. So I have these kind of things. But anyway, while we're here, look at the pre-market prices just before the market's open in 4 minutes. Tesla is showing a 7% up over here, which I think might still be low. I think within day, there might be climbing because today is going to be a very different day because of what they're announcing. So just a recap before we jump into the actual stuff. So we've got chip shortages, we've got factory fire. We have massive issues with COVID and stuff like that, really hitting their production lines and the ability with which they can go and upgrade things, the speed with which they can go and upgrade things, especially as, you know, one of their biggest facilities is in California, which has slightly more stringent rules in place than some other states do. So there's been a massive load of different things, and still they went and sold 185,000 cars. And the really exciting thing for me here is this is why I'm super excited. This is 100% year-on-year growth versus Q4 last year. Sorry, Q4 last year, Q1 last year. God. It's been too long a weekend. Q1 last year. And Q1 last year was largely, especially in America, their biggest market, was largely unaffected by all of this stuff, by all the things that have been happening more recently. So this is incredible because my target for the 2021 yearly sales is over 1 million. But it's not just because I did that, kind of stick my finger in the air and try to guess it. It's more because there's actually a good reason for it, which I will talk about in the video tomorrow. Anyway, if you were watching what was happening with Tesla on Friday and actually for most of the week, they weren't doing kind of very well. They're sort of jumping around, hovering. They kind of kept jumping up to 670, so they were like 890 almost over here, then falling back down. And if you look at the last month, it's just been up and down. Musk tweeted random stuff. Who knows? Anyway, before we jump in, let's see if people have any comments. Will Tesla hit 750? I don't know. I put that in the description as my kind of like, maybe we'll get there, but I have no idea. People are saying that they have bought in at 820, 750. So I have a bunch of different Tesla. I have, my average price here is high. Look at this. I'm on 672. I think my average price over all the different ones is maybe about 630 or something. I'm in the wrong portfolio here. One sec. Let me switch to one that is a bit more interesting, has a few more things, and actually has my preset. Let me log out of this one. So I'm going to be talking tomorrow as to why I have these different ones. If you have a spouse, you can have one account each, right? And they can come with their own ISAs and all that kind of good stuff. So, yeah. Anyway, let me jump up here. So, I started learning to invest about a month or two ago since I've been free-fall mode. Yeah, well, this is the one thing. Like some people, people often like to invest when, you know, everyone's talking about it. And typically people only begin talking about it when things are really hot, when things are exploding, things are going really big. But the problem is then typically after that period, there will be a crash. Maybe there'll be a short reset. Here, we haven't even had that. There's just been some tech stocks got sold off. So if you own tech in particular, because there's been a high growth thing. Oh, here we go. They've opened as I'm talking. And we're up to 707. So not quite the sort of 10% that maybe people were suspecting, but not far off this pre-trading price over here. Let's go and look at the actual chart and what's happening. So far, we're opening on 707. Let's just stick with that and see what happens. By the way, what's happening with NVIDIA, because I know AMD was up 2 or 3%. AMD is looking good. Why have I got two NVIDIAs? NVIDIA is up, although trending down. I'm not sure why. I'm not sure what's going on with NVIDIA over here. Apple, look at Apple back to 123. This is good. This is good. Like obviously for Apple, anything this size is good. I mean, for other companies, you'd be saying 1%. That's not very much, but this is pretty good. So this could be a really exciting day. So The likelihood with Tesla, though, is because so much money now with Tesla is institutional investors. Institutional investors typically will be coming in through the day. Quite often, like this is the thing people can forget about. Every single big ETF fund, etc., they have their rules about exactly how they invest, about how frequently through the day they go and buy or sell things, when they go and have to close out the positions, how long they have, what their strategy is. Do they take part in early volatile times? Do they stagger? There's a huge amount of rules by which these guys are governed, and those are often not really relevant to the swings. Sure, there's like traders and other factors and a million, other reasons why prices go up and down, but there's a lot of things that are sort of fixed and almost like independent of the pricing. And this is why, like, early doors, the volatility is often very high, same as just before the close. But typically middle of the day, it sort of stabilizes often and sort of does like a trend towards a point or whatever. And that's normally when some of the big guys begin coming in doing what they're doing. So as prices go up, especially if there's been a big like 7-8% increase overnight, that may well cause some of these guys who have to rebalance every day and have to ensure that at the end of the day they're in like best situation rebalance state. They're gonna have to rebuy at those points. And typically, if there's been a really big jump, that can actually, for big companies like Tesla, who's actually now like one of the biggest US companies by market cap, can cause their price to sort of be supported. It's like a sort of self-fulfilling prophecy. If the price drops, you're then sort of battling against this sell-off because people have to sell to rebalance books, etc. Anyway, so that's going to be exciting. I'm quite looking forward to making the video because I think some people might be interested at how I approach doing evaluations and stuff. Hi, Sasha. Edvin's saying, out of the number of Chinese EVs, do you think NIO is with the most potential? Do you have others on the horizon? I think NIO probably has most potential because they are there. They are selling cars. They are building those like swap stations. They are continuing to innovate, develop. With some of the others, like they're still, the difference is much bigger than their share price or market cap or other factors would indicate. I'm just not like, even on NIO, I have a tiny amount of NIO, and maybe like for the long term, I think there might be something there. I'm not 100% sure whether they've taken the right bet here on the whole swappable element of the design and swappable, in like interface. And I appreciate that China in this sense is hugely different to US, UK, just in everything, in consumer behaviors. In like, in China, if you're in 95% of person, you're going to be living in a giant block of flats. You're not going to be having your charger at your door, being able to charge your car. So the way you design products would naturally be different because your car is parked somewhere down the street, just in a random kind of lay-by or something like that. That's how people have their cars all over China and Chinese cities. So I get it, but I'm not sure globally whether that's going to play. And I'm not sure whether in the long run it's actually good, because infrastructure will adapt. Infrastructure will change, and as more cars are leaning towards a sort of rechargeable rather than swappable element, I just don't know at the moment. I think it's too early to tell which ones. I think if you look at some of the characteristics of what Tesla is doing right now and where the other non-EV manufacturers are, I think that's going to be quite an exciting kind of thing to follow, because I think that they're several years ahead, even if those other manufacturers start actually doing this stuff. This is what was quite exciting over the last 2 weeks, actually. So if you've been watching the EV market over the last 2 weeks, you'll notice that there's been a really big focus on, Volkswagen come in and say, hey, we're going to be the biggest electric car seller in the world by 2025. And what have they done in order to get there? Nothing. They've drawn some cars on paper. They produce a very small number of really poor quality electric cars. I mean, I looked into a bunch of data. I think out of a ridiculous, I can't remember how big the number is. I think it's like 100 something different factories. They only have one dedicated to producing electric car components. They have just sure that they're sort of dabbling in it, but they're not prepared to actually go and do the deep dive, go and say from this year we're going to be changing all our factories up, we're going to be stopping the production of ICE vehicles, etc. And the same with Mercedes. Mercedes literally went and drew a picture of a car that they're saying is going to be amazing, and they went and sold the story to all the press, who really loved it, and they said this is going to be so good, it is going to be way better than Tesla, etc. There's not even a working prototype. And then, the time to get to a working prototype, then the time to actually be able to manufacture it to anything like the specification that your guy who's really good at drawing things has decided is going to be is a huge step. And I think people are not realizing just the gap. You know, like just building a gigafactory, like it's a 2-year process fully to get everything fully, you know, bored, spec'd out, constructed. And that is if you're pretty aggressive. So I'm always quite excited about when people talk about these things. And I'm like, well, what are they actually doing? So other than saying we're going to be number one, what are they doing? And I look at their quarterly reports, I look at their updates, I don't see anything. And so for me, I'm not really seeing. Anyway, people are asking. Simon Hill's asking, would you ever do a trading series like a 1K to 10K? Not really, for two different reasons. One is I don't think they have to provide necessarily any kind of value. If you're really going to be doing something like that, you need to be taking just like really incredible bets. And either the bets you're going to be taking are going to pay off and you're going to succeed. But realistically, multiplying your money by 10 times is not a reasonable strategy that is actually viable for the average person. And the moment you hear people tell you that it is, you know that they're full of BS, because otherwise anyone can go and collect like, you know, £20,000 in credit card debt and make it into £200,000, bang, and then make it into 2 million in the next month. It's just like, whenever, like, this has become a really big thing on social media right now, right? People talking about, oh, hey, I am going to teach you the trading strategy of how to multiply your money by 10 times. I'm not that guy. I invest for the long term. I try to do maths with my investments. I try to, like, you know, do a proper assessment of any company that are putting reasonable money in by making a valuation model, by making my best estimates as to what they're going to be doing when, why that might impact their share price in the long term. Sure, there's going to be lots of swings and roundabouts in the long term. Sure, I'm going to be way off on some of my assumptions, but I still try to do those things. But the second thing is, I think for most people, I think provide more value by talking about how to plan your finances and money in the long term, rather than trying to like do this quick win or something like that, because those things are just not sustainable. They're not going to really help people in the long run. They're not going to help people educate themselves and understand how this stuff works. But what I will do, I think, sort of linked to that, is I'll do a few videos over the next month where I'm going to be talking about maybe some situations that people may find themselves in, and sort of like what I maybe would do in that case. So for example, like there's going to be a lot of people, unfortunately, in the next 2 to 3 months finding themselves out of a job after furlough stops, after the delayed VAT payments start. They've already started. And after the first repayments on government loans that were given out to companies start, which is going to be happening this month, next month, and in June for the vast majority, well, not vast majority, a huge number. I think like maybe half or even more than half took them out during those 3 months. So beginning of the pandemic last year. So when all of these are going to be overlapping, a lot of people are going to be losing their jobs. So I want to make a video, for example, if I was in that situation and I, for example, didn't have a load of money sitting in a bank account, which most people will not, like what would I do with my finances? How would I plan? What steps would I take? And I know that everyone's in a different situation, but maybe some of those types of videos would help a few people. So we'll see. We'll see. What else are people saying? Simon, thank you very much for saying you love my channel. I appreciate it. Somebody's saying, what are my thoughts on Micron? Duncan's asking. I have quite a few of these companies. I have a whole video about semiconductors. You should go and watch it. I actually talk about Micron within that video. It's one of the companies I'm invested in. I don't have a huge amount in there. My two biggest ones are the layer on above all the Qualcomms and Micron stuff like that. It's like AMD, NVIDIA. I mean, Qualcomm is sort of playing both in the production of the actual semiconductors and board components, and, you know, obviously their processor unit for mobile and all that kind of stuff. But yeah, I'm very bullish. I think they have some really unique things that other people don't have, and I think they're here to stay for the long term. The beauty of the semiconductor business is when companies get really good at producing particular kinds of components, particular like stacks of those components within those chips, like the science behind it is incredible, right? The amount of time it will take somebody who doesn't know what they're doing to go and start those businesses. And so this is becoming more and more of a thing. When people get really good, their chips are being used across like everything. You'll see those Micron chips sitting on so many boards. Same with, you know, Qualcomm, Texas Instruments, whoever. So I'm extremely bullish about some of those companies. Simon's saying, awesome answer. Wow, I'm going to buy a lot of beer on my 10 quid. Thank you so much, Simon. I really, really appreciate it. That's very kind. That's very kind. Thank you. What else are people saying? Infrastructure is saying, what's saying infrastructure is not there for large scale jump from fossil to electric. So I disagree on two fronts. So I actually worked in energy for a short bit during my career, which kind of is probably where I did the early bit of my trading education as well. I disagree and agree at the same time. So I get the argument, but I think people are overestimating the speed. So even a really rapid increase in the development of electric cars is still going to be taking many years. We're talking like a 10-year swing minimum to get to somewhere where they're really beginning to penetrate. And even with that level, Tesla has a huge potential. So I think there's that. And 10 years is a pretty long period, because that's the period during which you can easily go and build a huge amount of infrastructure, because you will be seeing the signs. That's number one. Number two is there's a huge shift coming right now in the ability to go and store and deploy energy from renewable sources, from continuous production sources that are being produced at night, that are being produced during low demand periods. Tesla is actually pretty much the leader company, maybe the only company that is globally actually trying to position themselves as the solution to this issue. Look, Tesla's actually dropping. This is an interesting one. Look, they're about $10 down from when they opened at 697. So let's see what happens with that. That'll be an interesting thing. But to me, I kind of look at it and I say, well, I hear the argument, but we're producing. So if you look at nuclear, tidal, if you look at like geothermal, there's a million different things that are happening. Offshore wind farms, onshore wind farms, like these are being constructed extremely fast in some countries, especially the more developed countries, which are also coincidentally the countries where Teslas are being sold in large numbers. And they can be constructed really quickly as well. So like, within a year or two, you can build quite substantial numbers of them. And the ability to capture that and then redistribute during peak hours is huge, number one. Number two, things like nuclear, etc., like you can't really turn them off or even turn them down by a huge amount just because of the nature of how they work. Lots of these cars, the more people are buying them who live in houses, etc., who are charging them overnight, like that's going to be another thing where you're actually dispensing a huge amount of the energy during times when it's not being used elsewhere. So I think when you actually begin breaking down by the numbers, I'm not sure I entirely agree with that argument, because I think there's a much, I think people are overstating the impact, but that's just my opinion. And I will be talking about energy in the update about Tesla tomorrow as well, and why I am pretty bullish about it. In fact, percentage wise, I'm probably more bullish about the energy side of the business for Tesla than I am about the car business. But even the car business on its own has some incredible potential. God, he's saying, I wish I bought more though. This is an interesting one. I thought that we're going to be going up. I don't know what this early drop is down to. This is kind of a weird one. I honestly thought that as we're progressing, so we're only about 13 minutes into the session, so it is early doors, but we shall find out. Hello, a few people different saying hello, afternoon, etc. Thank you very much for joining. I really appreciate it. I apologize. I have my different screens set up, and I have my comments probably on the furthest away screen, where if I'm reading comments and answering them, I'm literally facing the further direction away from the camera. I've got another screen here. I've got 4 screens, and my camera is actually in between 3 screens. So I should probably go and put some of these screens more near the camera. The problem is, this is one, like I'm learning this as I go. The problem is, if I'm talking to the camera, if I then go and look at some of the numbers or some of the stuff, if I look this way, or even if I look this way, it makes far more sense. It kind of looks like I'm looking at something. If I'm looking at the camera, then I have a screen right here and I'm looking at this screen. It kind of looks weird. It looks like I'm looking just a tiny bit off the camera. It looks like I'm sort of looking at the camera, but not. Maybe I'm looking at this, the camera flippy screen next to the camera or something like that. So it's actually worse if I place the screens a bit closer. But anyway, I'm digressing. I'm going way off. So the thing that amuses me with Tesla is people are still saying, look at this. So there's a bit of a sell-off. We're now more than $10 down from when we opened up this morning. And the thing that amuses me with this is I go and look at Tesla and I'm saying, okay, so they've sold 185,000 in Q1, typically the low quarter of the year, right? When things are quiet, people don't have the money because Christmas happened, Q4 happened, they spend all that money, etc. Q4 is a busy period. We're looking at Shanghai scaling up really fast. We're looking at potentially, now different people have expectations. I know Tesla is still saying that they want to start production at Austin this year, possibly Q3, possibly Q4. I am not 100% sure. I think they might, but only right at the end of the year as sort of like small initial test runs. And I think it's not going to be across all the different production lines. But Q1 next year, I think we're going to be going really strong, beginning to ramp up that production. Now, Austin, there's a guy who has a YouTube channel. You should go and look it up if you're interested. He does a daily drone film of the Tesla factory being built, and they kind of they kind of even like reference his YouTube channel on their website and places and stuff. He just shows you what's been happening every day with like trucks arriving. The pace at which they're building that thing is insane. So there's that one to come online. There's the expansion at Shanghai, the second site they bought, which I think is probably only going to be next year through to 2023. That's actually, I think, probably was bought to manufacture the new Model 2 that hasn't been announced yet. Possibly. That's my expectation anyway. So if you look at the numbers, I don't see why this year, given where they're at with the current factories and the expansion that they're working on, I don't see why they can't hit the 1 million mark, given that the lowest quarter in the year has pocketed 185k, and they're growing at something like 100% year on year for many quarters in a row, sort of averaging that rate. It's insane. And so I'm looking at it going, okay, so 1 million cars, if today they were showing 1 million cars run rate, but ramping up to 2 million, their share price will be so far north of the $700 mark. But yet, like, it's like people saying, well, they're not there yet. And I'm like, okay, they're not. But did you see, can you see it? You can see them building the stuff, right? You can see them literally constructing the thing that is tomorrow going to be making it. They're not just making a press release so Volkswagen do a press release, their share price just goes and explodes through the roof. And it's like, have you done anything? No. Okay, but these guys that are, well, they're new kids to the block, right? They don't know what they're doing. They're only selling 185,000 cars a quarter. That's nothing. The fact that they might be doubling or tripling it in the next 2 years, who cares about that? We shall find out. What else are people saying? Vladimir is saying, I'm surprised Facebook is up after that data leak. Yeah, so I think that's like a news story that is broken, that journos didn't do enough homework. The data leak is sort of past news, right? As far as I understand it, it's the same data leak that already happened 2 years ago, but it's sort of resurfaced because somebody republished the data, but the data for whoever, hackers and other people and whoever wants it, is already out there. So I'm not 100% sure if it's like really that noteworthy, because it's not like there's been a new breach or a new thing or something like that. That's what I understand anyway. I don't know anything about it, but that's what I understand it. A lot of people are saying they've opened a FREETRADE account, which is really interesting for two reasons for me. One is, I feel like I understand why Trading 212 have paused, and I'm hugely surprised that they haven't reopened, say, yesterday or today. Maybe they have. Has anyone seen whether they have or not? Let's see. Go incognito. Have they? Still on the waiting list. So I'm super surprised because they really missed out on several different things. One is they missed out on the end of the financial year, but I understand that. So they decided to go and introduce those foreign exchange fees, and they really couldn't. And this is like, they denied this really strongly. When I made a video about this, more than one video if you watch my channel, where I spoke, the reason Trading 212, I think, suspended new accounts really is because they introduced these new fees. And what you don't want to do is you don't want to book an account and then somebody creates an account and then like 2 days later fees start, but you create an account without those fees being in place. And you can't really, it's not very easy, it's very, very difficult to go and create an account which says, well, you're going to start with the account with no fees, but in 2 days, your new terms and conditions will be this. And like giving that to the customer up front in a fair and legally compliant way is incredibly difficult. So in some way you would make that pause before you go and start booking new accounts, because you want, that gap, then you begin booking the accounts and the new accounts are already on the new terms, and it gives you that kind of gap. But given now, a lot of people are saying, well, where do I start with my ISA for this upcoming year? Maybe what they're going to be doing is tomorrow morning, they'll go and do a big release, or sometime later this week, because as people are thinking, well, this new month is starting, where do I put my ISA? Before everyone's paychecks for the first month come in, which is typically when people go and begin making those deposits. And if that happens, I'll feel extremely vindicated for making videos where I got so much hate from Trading 212 themselves, which was public. They dispensed their hate on their own community at me, but also from a lot of people who are really big fans. I'm a big fan of Trading 212. Look, I'm looking at Trading 212 on my live video, so so I'm a big fan of what they do, and I hope that they continue doing it and improve. But it's one of those where I'm looking at it and saying, well, why not say the thing that you're doing? Because I don't think there's any problem. Like, there's no issue with saying, well, we're going to pause because we're introducing these new fees, and we don't want to book new accounts and then do a bait and switch in them, and unfortunately we need the new fees to make the commercial model work. Why not just say that? Anyway, I would expect that to happen, but they've obviously lost to FREETRADE over this time, because a lot of people are going to be switching to FREETRADE at the end of this financial year that's ending today, and I imagine that most people probably have already done it, or I don't know, with a fast bank transfer that somebody mentioned, I think, in the comments earlier, you can now go and open the account and deposit your money really, really quickly. Even if you do it today, I'm imagining the money will be there, and because they're going to be this side of the fifth financial year split, you'll be able to take advantage of last year's allowance. By the way, if you want to do that, make sure you use my link in the description below so that you can get yourself a free share by signing up through the link, which you otherwise won't get. Thank you very much if anyone decides to do that. But also, a lot of these people who are signing up or have been over the last 2 months, I imagine they'll go and begin using FREETRADE, and they'll just like the app because it's nice. Like, it lacks its own things, like it doesn't have as many shares, especially some UK ones that are not the big ones, like Rolls-Royce, for example. I have Rolls-Royce, but they don't have it. So there's a bunch of stuff that they're missing, but there's a lot of good things about them, especially on the ethics front. Like, they definitely are miles ahead of some of the other apps in terms of how they engage with customers, the level of transparency, the level of honesty, the business principles that they've been sticking to really religiously, and kind of saying, well, yeah, we're going to be charging fees. We're not going to be as cheap as some because we don't do some of this other stuff. We don't have plans to do some of this other stuff that these other guys do, and that's kind of okay with us. We're not going to be as fast at growth because of it. But anyway, but the people who've been signing up with them are naturally not going to be going and signing up with the other providers because, well, like, you're already sticky, right? You already, and given how busy the market's been, I'm just surprised that they've chosen to do it here, because all of these guys are probably not going to be switching. I do appreciate one element, which is you have to pay £3 a month for the FREETRADE ISA. So I wonder how many people who have set up the FREETRADE ISA once trading 22 reopen, who will actually switch over from FREETRADE and do a transfer over, because you can do that. You can mid-year go and do a transfer to a trading 212 ISA. So open that account, don't make deposit until you've done the transfer, and then you can kind of switch to using the other one, because foreign exchange fees are lower and there's no monthly fee, and there's other benefits like better data, better performance data, better other stuff, live prices rather than delayed prices. There's a lot of reasons why trading 212 is probably actually better in some ways, in a lot of ways, than FREETRADE. But I do wonder whether the stickiness of, like, I'm already there, I know how to use it, I'm comfortable with it, the fees are not that big, actually much lower than the big platforms anyway. So it'll be quite an interesting thing to see how many people switch. I probably should make a video about it, talk about it. We shall find out. What are people saying? Any news on Chase UK? I have heard absolutely nothing. They made a big announcement and nothing. They were kind of making it sound like it was sort of imminent, like they've been working on it for like a year, but I'm not. So for anyone who hasn't heard, they're planning, JP Morgan Chase are planning to open a new bank in the UK to compete with Monzo, Starling, and all the rest of them. So that'll be quite an interesting one if and when it happens, but we shall find out. If it happens and if it's any good, or if it's just going to be a sort of, because the problem is that a lot of big banks have tried doing it and failed miserably. Like Bo was a really good example of trying to become a digital bank by under a new brand, but not actually building it like a digital bank, just basically doing a rehashed version of the same rubbish that they are currently operating. So we shall have to wait and find out. Somebody saying, what credit score do I need for a mortgage? So this is the thing, like in the UK, there isn't the same thing as in the US in that there is one number that matters. In fact, like every company will be making decisions completely differently, especially for mortgages. There is so much like bespoke custom stuff with each company and how they make decisions, how they calculate your risk, the circumstances you're in, if you're self-employed, if you're employed, like what your debt level is, affordability. Everyone does it so differently that there isn't a centralized number. In fact, you could go and qualify for a huge mortgage with one company and not qualify for a much lower mortgage with another company on the same day with exactly the same data and circumstances. I apologize if you can hear some kind of rustling in the background. One of my cats has decided that it wants to chase its tail right in the middle of my video, but hey, there we go. Birth of My Dog Tan saying, don't stream from your main channel or YouTube will crash your stats on the basis that live streams have lower interaction. Yes and no. I actually think I'm doing all right actually with these. The reason I'm doing them is I think they really work for my existing audience who won't necessarily jump to a different channel. I don't do that many of them, and I'm only really doing them short term, as in I'm going to be. I kill these live streams relatively quickly after they go live, so I let people watch them if they want to. Oh my god, what is going on? I let people watch them if they want to watch them, but if they but after a few days, I just go and get rid of them because they're not really interesting after a few days, because they're very current about what's happening right now. Nobody wants to watch what's happening with Tesla. After they've happened, they don't want to watch me talking about the market, what's happening with candlesticks or any news that's been coming over the weekend. So they don't really affect me whatsoever. And I know some people have been doing that. Yeah, I've seen, and people are saying the same. I have seen those videos that say it's really bad for you. I also have seen examples where it's completely the opposite, because the content is supplementary, in my opinion. It's not instead of. So I think like some people kind of do like very rare videos. I do so many videos on my main channel. I'm planning to probably be doing like, I don't know, like something like 30, 40 videos a month, and then increase it from there. I don't think these lives are really going to be affecting anything much at all. So I'm not sure about it. I have seen very good examples where the two can work really well together. Like, so one YouTuber that does it really well is a guy called Meet Kevin that you probably have seen. I actually talked about his channel. I actually like learned a lot from setting up my own channel, from how he does stuff. He does a huge amount of lives, and they only do well for his channel. In fact, I think that's why his channel is doing so well, because he mixes this live with a sort of similar to live but not quite live videos. I think the difficulty is some people do live videos where the format is so entirely different, and the topics they talk about are so entirely different. They'll do like a 2-hour interview, but then they'll do something, and I think that begins being the problem. Like the topics, the nature of the audience, the different people who actually like the two. I actually think the people watching my lives, the overlap would be very similar with the people who don't. And I think it's just a different content format that YouTube will, like, I don't think YouTube wants in the long term to have like one little channel for lives, one little channel for main videos, one little channel for shorts, which is what some people are doing. I think they are not getting it all right at the beginning, but they're definitely, I don't think that's the intent. I think the intent is that the same channel should be able to produce these different formats, like so that on mobile you can show the shorts shelf, so that when you log into YouTube and you've already watched all this stuff and you're just trying to figure out if the live video pops up, you're like, I want to watch that. I think the intent is definitely that. So I'm going to stick with the intent, even if right now it might not be the most obvious strategy. But anyway, I'm talking about something that nobody actually cares about. There we go. Tesla is dropping further. This is a massive surprise to me. I honestly thought that we're going to be going way up from the 7% open. Like, the fact that we're now at 690 territory, I was buying on the way down at 690, 680 quite a bit. I think not in this account, but in one of my other accounts. Yes, my average price here is quite low on this one, but not on all of them. On my eToro one, it's 875 or something like that. So I bought one share of Tesla. But we'll see. What are people saying on different topic? What about partnering with an accounting firm? No endorsement financial advice. I'm not really sure. My partnering what? I don't want to, like, it's not like I can't, but I want to provide financial advice. I don't want to provide financial advice to anyone. What are people saying? What's a ticker? People are talking about specific stocks that I don't really follow or talk about, so I'm not going to go into the details on that. Change.2 have more companies listed. Yep, that's right. Anyway, I need to jump off, guys. I need to go and make an actual video. I'm going to make a video. I'm going to make 2 videos tomorrow. So for anyone watching my channel regularly, I'm going to have 2 videos come out tomorrow that I think will interest people. One will be not a portfolio update in the sense like, here's my portfolio update. Look, I have £300 in my portfolio. Look, I have 0.01 shares of this company and it's worth this. Look, I have 0.02. I'm not going to be doing that. What I'll do is I'll talk about some issues with my portfolio that I think are really important for people to not do with theirs, and I'll explain why I have those issues. And so I'm going to talk about some of the problems with my portfolio, but in the process, I'll go and show everything that I own across the different accounts that I have. But the more interesting one will be the Tesla update, which will be going through the exact model that I have for my valuation for Tesla, why I think the current price is ridiculously low, and why I've been buying quite a bit of them. So that'll be quite an interesting one. And then I think later in the week there's going to be some other interesting videos on what my short to medium term plans might be with my investments, which will be probably not what people expect. But anyway, we'll come to those later in the week. So I'm going to jump off now, and I'm going to go and try to just think about what is going to be in those videos, because I need to do quite a bit of pre-work for both of them in terms of making them useful. So thank you very much to everyone joining. I hope I answered some of the people's questions. I really, really appreciate anyone joining in. Thank you so much. And as always, I will see you guys later.